Dental. Comprehensive dentistry at 14 convenient locations in Springfield, Chicopee, Longmeadow, West Springfield, Belchertown, East Longmeadow, Ludlow, Northampton, Greenfield, and Wilbraham, as well as 29 Broad Street in Westfield. Bay State Dental makes it a priority to help you achieve and maintain the healthy smile you deserve. On the web at baystatedental.com.
We thank the generosity of our underwriters. For more information, please contact the Westfield State Foundation at 413-572-8646. Friday mornings is something different on 89.5 FM. It's JP's Talk About Town.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
Live from the campus of Westfield State University. This is 89.5 FM, WSKB, Westfield.
Good morning, everyone. This is Mark Auerbach, and you're listening to Artsbeat Radio here on 89.5 FM WSKB this Friday morning. Beautiful, crisp morning out there. Great weekend for theater up and coming. So if you're looking for something to see, On Your Feet, the story of Emilio and Gloria Estefan is just rocking it at the Bushnell in Hartford. The Royal Family of Broadway is a world premiere musical at Barrington Stage. Really great play, The Invisible Hand, wraps up at Theater Works in Hartford. Church and State, a dynamic play about a politician on the far right who has to confront his conscience over issues in his community, is at the Berkshire Theater Group opening their 90th anniversary season. And Sweeney Todd is pie making at stores at the Connecticut Repertory Theater. We're going to spend an hour this morning with Eric Hill, the actor-director, who many of you know in the area for having been at Stage West some time ago, and then took the trip to Connecticut Repertory Theater, Brandeis, and then Berkshire Theater Group, where you now get to see him direct and occasionally act. Good morning, Eric.
Hey, how you doing, Mark?
I'm good, Eric. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Well, I know Berkshire Theater is celebrating its 90th anniversary season, which just kicked off, and they're saving your play for the last. But yeah. What is your role going to be this summer at Berkshire Theater?
Well, my role usually in the summertime is to support my spouse, who happens to be the artistic director and chief executive officer there, and she's got a big job, and so I end up spending a lot of time in my summers supporting her and helping her through the summer, which can be a pretty overwhelming experience. And then I end up, of course, directing the play somewhere in the lineup, one or sometimes two, depending on the year. So mostly it's, my summers are not anywhere near as hectic as hers are. My summers tend to be more of a support role.
But your play actually comes to Berkshire Theater in the fall.
Yeah, it's what we call the Leaf Peepers play. It's the one we put up in the fall. It's part of our sort of we take a little hiatus after the summer season, and then this show runs during the colorful months or the colorful weeks in the fall when people mostly come up to visit and take a look at what's going on with the foliage. So my play is in that slot this year, and it's at the Unicorn, which is our second stage.
Do you want to give us a preview of it, or do you want to wait until fall to talk about it?
Well, we should probably, we could wait until fall to really talk about it, because it's a Pirandello play, and it's an interesting piece, but one that I think takes its own time to explain and to discuss. We should probably wait and do that then.
Okay.
You'll have me back, right?
Oh, of course. And we're actually coming up to Berkshire Theater, I believe, on July 7th to live tape a 2-hour special about the 90th season. And
terrific.
Hopefully get to talk with the fabulous Kate McGuire and her entire crew. I attended the press opening last weekend of Church and State, which really had an impact on me. I think because of it it deals with issues that are so current. But one of the things that I noted is it kicks off, the play is about a candidate running for re-election, kicks off with a campaign video that was produced by the next generation of Hills in theater. Your son did a great Alex Hill did a wonderful job with the video on that.
Yeah, well, Alexander went to Syracuse Newhouse School, and he studied film and television and video there, and he's gone on to work in the profession, and he's doing very well. And his work is really outstanding. Now, he's not in the theater, per se, but his work, gets produced in the theater because of this kind of, video production inside of the play. But he does do independent video work and film work, and he's quite good. And I'm impressed with his skills. I don't know where he got the talent. I have no idea.
Well, it must have been in the drinking water there, and maybe with a little mentoring from you and Kate.
I think he did it. He did it on his own. I must admit, he was never pressured to go into any kind of, this line of work. He really just selected it on his own. I'm very surprised.
Have you seen Church and State?
I haven't seen the production. I'm waiting to go see it this week, and I have a friend from out of town, and we're going to go see it tomorrow night, actually. And I think we'll stay for the talk back after the talk. There's a discussion after the show each night, and we have different guests who come in, some from people who are politically and socially voices in the community who are able to speak to the issues that are raised by the play, and there's always a lively talk back afterwards, so we'll be doing that as well.
Yeah, the night that we attended, the playwright and the director were involved in the talkback, and unfortunately I never get to go to talkbacks because I have to run and write a review, but we stayed for it, and it was fascinating.
Yeah, well, I think the play invites it, and I think that there's a lot of things that are current on everybody's mind, and I think the play raises some of these issues, and so talkbacks have proven to be lively from what I hear, but I've read the play, I haven't seen it yet.
Let me ask you a question. This play deals with, Church and State, deals with a very current issue, and audiences are rushing to see it and grappling with it and debating it. A couple of summers ago, Barrington Stage produced a play called American Son, which dealt with racism and biracial relationship and parents and child. And at Barrington Stage, opening this weekend, is a play called The Cake, about a baker who declines to bake a cake for a lesbian couple getting married. How come the theater can deal with contemporary issues? Audiences flock to it, they discuss it, and they debate it. And the discourse was respectful, at least at the talkback I attended. And yet movies and TV can't do the same thing. What is it that the theater has that will make people think and talk?
It's live, I think, is the first thing. When people sit in a room with other people and the thing they're watching is happening live in front of them, and everybody is experiencing something in a room firsthand, I think it's, first of all, there's a kind of, I don't want to say etiquette necessarily, but there is the reality of being in the room with other people, and they're present, and you're listening to live people talking and responding. I think people tend to, react differently under those circumstances. So what TV is unfortunately done in the cable news area, no matter what station you listen to and watch, it's removed. It's not part of your immediate life. It's all the difference between, I'm a big radio listener. I listen to you, or I listen to public radio. So I'm not so much of a cable news watcher, and even radio, I think, has more of a kind of intimacy than the cable news does. When you're in a theater, it's not like the ideas and the feelings and so forth that you have are not present that you might have under other circumstances. I think how you tend to present yourself and how you interact with people in a live situation, even as an audience member in a talkback, for example, would tend to be different because the structure the rules in place, and you're respecting the theater, you're respecting the place, you're respecting the way in which things are communicated, and decency and a voice that's, you know, offered up in you know, an atmosphere of mutual respect is sort of a must. Otherwise, it can turn into a brawl, which has happened in the history of theater. It's not like that hasn't gone on at times in the history of theater, but I think people tend to respect the form a little bit more. And people who are there, by the way, tend to be there because they really, really want to be there. You know, theater's not an inexpensive sport. Sometimes you have to, you know, pay a ticket price that's a lot higher than a movie theater. And I think people just tend to value the experience and come there because they're looking for something more than just news. They're looking for an experience that engages them intellectually, emotionally, in so many different kinds of ways. And most people who go to the theater, by the way, are people who are experienced in going to the theater. So people who say, you know, as you say, flock to see a certain play. That's probably people, by and large, who go to see a lot of plays, and they, you know, hear something about a play that they find out is really worth their time and attention. They do tend to show up, but the people who do show up tend to be theater goers, by and large, and people who understand the form and appreciate it. So I think we have that advantage, and of course the numbers are not. You know, when you really look at the numbers. Strategically speaking, compared to other things, the numbers aren't huge. You know, the Unicorn is a fairly small theater. It's filled every night, but it's not a, you know, vast house by any stretch. And there's a kind of intimacy that's involved in theater, and I think that's the next thing that comes to mind. That when people are, you know, in a kind of intimate situation, different things are stimulated in them because of the proximity and the closeness, and so the way in which they receive material and the way they respond, I think, is very different. I'm always fascinated as an actor and director to how people think and talk about a play after they leave the theater on their way home, because I'm sure it would be fascinating to be, you know, in a car with many people on their way home to find out exactly what they really think. Because I'm not sure in a theater environment, some people are tempted to voice their you know, opinion in a clear and strong way sometimes, but usually most people are a little reticent to speak up in an intimate live situation that sometimes can be very intimidating. So I think that's some of the reasons why the theater tends to be a little bit more you know, of a respectful place. But can I also say that the simply state of the dialogue in our country has gotten ridiculous. If you listen to the cable news and people screaming at each other, or go on Facebook and listen to the outrage that goes on, and you see a lot of anger and a lot of, you know, heightened emotions that are just part and parcel with the times we're living in. So I think that you know, common decency has gone out of the public dialogue.
I would totally agree with that. I am appalled sometimes, even at some of my colleagues in media, at the way they get hysterical over things, and everything is get your opinion and your thought out there first before anyone else, whether you fact check it or not. And the discourse has gotten really ugly in so many levels. I cringe sometimes turning on television.
Well, and knowing that everybody's preceded in their camp and they're not going to budge, and that's what I see is there seems to be people really taking sides in such a way as to be really entrenched in their positions, and there's not really a lot of dialogue. There's just a lot of prefabricated positioning that just gets voiced. And much of it, if something in a new wrinkle occurs in the news, which it does seems every minute of every day, everybody's already got a prepackaged opinion about it because they're so ensconced in their own position that it's very difficult for any kind of independent variety, you know, in terms of opinion. And after a while, I personally, the reason why I love the theater is I can go into the theater and just unplug all that outside information and simply deal with real people in a, you know, rehearsal hall or in a, you know, production or performance, and really deal with, you know, live human beings. That's why I love theater. It gets you away from that kind of detached non-immediate kind of perspective where we all derive opinions from events and the reaction to events, rather than derive our sensibilities and our human understanding from what interacting with people. And unfortunately, with all of the different ways we can access news and media with the internet and so forth, I think people get pulled away a lot from just dealing with other human beings on a live level, if you will, in a common social activity, not even playgoing. And you can feel it in the, I went out of the country, and I know we're going to talk about this later, but I went out of the country to Armenia for 3 weeks during the course of this past spring. And, of course, it's a very different country, a very different place, but I was really yanked out of the immediate turmoil of the American political scene for 3 weeks and put into a very different world where they have very real and very immediate problems. And I forgot about the United States of America for 3 weeks and thought about other things and other people. And I was shocked when I came back at the kind of dialogue that I was seeing. There was such a civility and kind of human contact in Armenia when I was there, and I came back to America, and there was this very brittle, very harsh, you could feel it right away. Not necessarily even on TV or in that way, but just interacting with people. There's a kind of tension in our society that I've never really experienced in my 65 years. That is very alarming, and I think we're going through a very unique period. And I think that's why theater is, in this particular era, so crucially important, because it is a form of dialogue that is unique, that has dimensions to it that I think are important. And most important of those is to listen to a story, to listen with compassion, understanding, and to hear something in its complexity and entirety before you render a thought or opinion. I think that's important, and not something that we do so often anymore. We're pretty quick to our opinions these days, and I think being able to uncover and pull back the layers on certain phenomena in the hands of a good playwright who has a way of looking at the world incisively and to open up all kinds of angles of understanding. That to me is important in this era. So I see theater being very popular right now, and people are attending theater in large numbers. And I kind of anticipated that. I spoke to Kate about that during the course of the year. I said, people are going to show up for theater this year. The economy's good. That helps, certainly. But most importantly, I think people are looking for something to do that is an alternative to having to sit around and listen to everybody go on about their political opinions.
It's actually it's an oasis away from people's political opinions, even when the play is political.
Yeah, because the play isn't political in the way that you were accustomed to hearing.
Exactly. We're talking with Eric Hill, the actor, the director, and the teacher. He will be directing at the Berkshire Theater Group this summer, or actually this fall, as the conclusion of their 90th anniversary season. We're going to take a short break to thank our underwriters and acknowledge their support of ArtsBeat Radio here on 89.5 WSKB. This is Mark Auerbach. Our engineer this morning is Peter Coles, and we'll be right back.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Comcast and Xfinity.com, offering Xfinity TV, Internet, home phone, and home security services. Information on all that Xfinity has to offer in the Westfield area is available online at Xfinity.com.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Wally Computer Associates, one of the largest technology providers in North America. Headquartered in Southwick, Wally provides all of the products and services that you'd expect from a world-class technology partner to schools, colleges, businesses, as well as state and local governments and agencies. Wally Computer Associates, meeting all of your technology needs. On the web at WCA.com.
WSKB's programming is generously underwritten by Whip City Fiber, Westfield Gas and Electric, where they offer gigabit internet speed. Whip City Fiber, turning Westfield's neighborhoods into fiberhoods. On the web at whipcityfiber.com. We thank the generosity of our underwriters. For more information, please contact the Westfield State Foundation at 413-572-8646. Friday mornings is something different on 89.5 FM. It's JP's Talk About Town.
Community Radio.
89.5
WSKB.
Live from the campus of Westfield State University, this is 89.5 FM, WSKB, Westfield.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Arts Beat Radio. I'm your host, Mark Auerbach, with Peter Coles here in the studio at Westfield State University. We're talking with Eric Hill, the actor, director, teacher, this morning. A full hour of Eric Hill. I'm always glad, Eric, when you're on a program and you and I get to chat.
It's like us just sort of having a chat, and a lot of other people get to listen.
Yeah. You mentioned before the break that you spent several weeks in Armenia this year, and I was at my high school reunion a couple of weeks ago, and the head of school at Northfield Mount Hermon, who is actually leaving after many years to take a new job, was talking about Armenia. He is Armenian and had gone back to visit his home country, although he was born and raised in this country. And I said, well, you know, my friend Eric Hill is in Armenia now working on a project, and his eyes lit up and he was curious. So I hope he's listening this morning. I'm going to send him a tape of what we talk about later. But what brought you to Armenia, and how did you get involved?
I got involved because last March, not this past March, but a year ago, in March, I was asked to do the stage direction for a production at Lincoln Center that was for the 25th anniversary of the Armenian entrance into the UN and their mission, celebrating their mission at the UN. And I was worked at that time with the woman who was the wife of the then ambassador to the UN, and we got to be good friends. And she works with this organization in Armenia called the Children of Armenia Fund, which is a children's fund that goes into rural villages, helps to restore buildings and create health care and education centers, and allow village kids to be able to move to the next level in terms of education, because the school system, of course, struggles under the same financial restrictions, I'm sure, that the rest of the country does. And so this was a movement to help the kids in Armenia grow with the growing democracy that's unfolding there. As you may. So I was invited as a result of this experience in New York at Lincoln Center. I was invited to come and help with the opening of a brand new center that they've created in a remote region of Armenia, and to produce a kind of opening gala event, and to work with this organization and the children, and to just have an experience that for me was sort of out of the realm of what I normally do. But my primary interest, and the reason why I was drawn into this, was because of the children there and the approach that they're taking with helping these children. In the meantime, Armenia has had, right before I went there, what they call the Velvet Revolution, in which the entire government was overturned by public protest, and not a shot was fired and not a person was killed in the entire revolution. But they were able to overturn the entire government and bring it into more into the people's hands. They created a parliamentary system of government. They've really changed everything in the course of a very short period of time. And so all that was unfolding while I was there doing this project with them. And what you found there was a former Soviet state, a former Soviet country that had suffered under the weight of the Soviet Union for all those decades. It received its independence when everybody else did. But Armenia is a very different country from the rest of what was the Soviet Union. It's a very distinctive country, distinctive people, and they have their own way of going about things. And I was just, when you enter into Armenia, it's like your friend when his eyes lit up like that. When Americans show up, or anybody really shows up and says, I'm here to be a part of this experience and to help with whatever I can in this emerging country, they are so receptive and so warm. It's like you've entered into a family almost. And I was so, felt so embraced by the whole experience that it really just, it's engaged a lot of my time, a lot of my energy, a lot of my thought. And it's taken my mind off of the problems we have here in this country, because I'm thinking about other things. interestingly enough, of course, I turn around and come home, and right away we're presented with this horrible situation with children on the American southern border. And so you can imagine coming from this experience in Armenia where we were, it was all about children and helping children, then you come back to America and you see this terrible situation unfold. So it set everything that I was doing in stark relief, but it really did show me that in a country where their focus really is on human resources because they don't have a whole lot of other resources, children are an extremely precious commodity to them. I don't mean commodity in the sense of commercial commodity. I mean as a resource. Their minds, their hearts, their spirits, they are invested in these things because the children represent their future. And educating their children and bringing them in connection with the modern world and the connected world is of a high priority. And how they go about teaching children is something I think in America we could probably learn something from. I've been in education my whole life and taught kids at all levels and continue to do that. And I think, the education system in our country suffers under the weight of a lot of stuff. But probably the thing we suffer under the weight of the most is recognizing that, when you have every new generation, you have the new opportunity to look to the future and create an idea of what the world can be. And children always want to have a grasp of something new. They always want to have something forward-looking. They always want to be able to feel like the world is going to be able to open up for them. And if we educate our kids with that knowledge, that they are anxious for that learning, we could probably serve to our kids a lot better with approaching education in that way. And we don't always do that. Our education system becomes a victim of, like so many other things, of a commercial approach to, what's going to do them well in business or how they're going to, survive in the economic reality of our world. And kids need to be able to, learn how to survive. But children need to learn how to survive emotionally and psychologically in the world before they need to learn how to survive economically. And before they need to survive sociologically in all kinds of areas. And I'm not sure we pay enough attention to that in our education system at all levels. And that was something in Armenia I became very, very aware of. It's a smaller country, obviously, so people are much closer. But to a degree, I think we think the education system will take care of itself. And it won't. It's not like the economy. It doesn't just work. It needs attention and it needs care. And I'm not sure that we always put that kind of attention or care into our educational system. Something that concerns me greatly. And so that was how I got involved, and that's what it produced by way of my reaction.
You posted several photographs while you were there on Facebook to your friends. A stunningly beautiful country.
Yes.
But some of the comments that you made during the course of your visit, it seemed that the people of Armenia had a emphasis on quality of life that seems to be absent in America. They seem to be very appreciative of everyday little things that made their lives better. They didn't seem to take a lot for granted. Did you find that that their spirit was significantly different than ours?
Yes, I did. It's funny when you think of looking for hope in places, because sometimes in this recent months, and I guess it's turned over to a year and a half now almost since this new administration has been. I think despair has been in the hearts and minds of a lot of people here, and so you kind of look for hope wherever you can find it, at least from my perspective. Not sure there are other people who find all what's going on just fine, but I don't. And so when I went there, you think, well, Armenia is not necessarily a place you're going to be finding unbounded hope, because we all know to some degree the history there. The first genocide of the 20th century took place in Armenia, although many people still don't want to recognize that. And these people have suffered, and then followed immediately by communism it's been of all the people in the world to have lost hope a long time ago, these people would be a primary candidate for that, but they don't. They have unbounded optimism, and what you experience when you go there is people who know hope in the face of overwhelmingly negative odds. They're inspiring in that way. Particularly this group I worked with, the Children of Armenia Fund. These people were so positive-minded and so energetic and committed to the future and to the kids that they work with, and they transmit this positive energy and this optimism and this hope that is not able to be suppressed. And I think it's fabulous. And it was, in fact, I got infected by it. I was caught up in it. And so, yeah, there was a different attitude. Now, do they have some very serious problems there? Of course they do. Unemployment is, a situation there economically that still needs to be very much worked out, and they have, a lot of problems on their way getting towards a better life, many of them. But they hang together in a way that I found very unique. I found the people there, they are a homogeneous society, the same race, same culture. They have one religion. They have one language that only they speak. So they are very tight people in the first place. But what they do is they really work together to help one another get to things. The family units are, I think, very strong. And so there was a kind of sense of a togetherness that I feel our country doesn't really have right now, that we feel like we're pulling apart a lot of places. And these people have a sense of pulling together, and that was inspiring. And so, yes, I did feel something very different, and I experienced a different kind of attitude, particularly with the group that I was working with.
Will you continue to work with them? Do you think you'll be going back?
Oh yeah, of course. Of course, it's very once you're in. It's very hard to turn your back on some of the things that you see there going on, and the way people are working together, and some of the situations that you're trying to alleviate. It's very hard to see them and to see what's going on and to work with it, and then just sort of walk away and not feel connected. So yeah, of course I'll go back because I feel the attachment personally to the people and the process, and certainly to the kids.
Let me ask another question before we go to the break. Did you ever anticipate, as your career and your life was moving forward, that you would get involved in a project like this? Because it's very unique to some of the other things that you've done.
No, I never did, Mark, to tell you the truth. And you've known me pretty much in my professional life from a very early time. We've known each other for, you're not going to believe how long this is.
I know, I was adding it up.
35 years we're going on to here pretty soon, Mark.
I know, Eric. I know. We probably need a celebration.
We need some kind of anniversary for that. That's a long time. And so you've seen my work and what the trajectory of my career has been over a number of decades here. No is the simple answer. But, I've had the very, very good fortune in my career to be able to do so many different things. You named a couple of theaters along the way that I've been, Stage West, the Connecticut Repertory Theater, here at the Berkshire Theater Festival. All of that has allowed me the opportunity to achieve a lot of the dreams that I set out, within my mind to operate with in my career. I've done the kind of work that I've wanted. I've worked with the kind of people I've wanted to. I've established my own, I think, style, and I've been so lucky to be able to do that. It's really made a huge difference. So once you do that and you've accomplished a certain amount and you get to a certain age, I have to confess, you begin to look for a broader experience in your life and something that will involve you in the world in a way that you hadn't been before. And I guess because you get older and you see that, your time on the planet is limited, you want to do good while you can. And I certainly felt in the theater I was always trying my best to do good. But when you get out into the world and you can do some, very direct good for people, it's something that means a lot. So, yeah, no, I didn't see it coming, but when it did come, I felt like it was the right time and then in the right way.
Do you think that some of the lessons that you may have learned personally during this experience that continues to unfold will show up in some of the future plays that you direct?
Well, I have to say that, all in all, it's not like it was just an immediate conversion. It was sort of, these things all evolved. So I think that over time, my work has evolved in a way that some of these thoughts and feelings have already been incorporated, certainly in how I go about my work and the kind of plays that I do, had already sort of started to take shape, and certainly, this new direction was an outgrowth of something already happening inside of me, and so it was already happening inside of my work to a certain extent. But I have to say that from my point of view, and this is always important, whatever governs the work in the theater is governed for me by the playwright that I'm working on, and so the connections internally that I make are not ones that maybe by selecting the play, but once I'm in a play, my personal perspective is not as important, and maybe you don't hear directors say this all the time. My personal perspective is not anywhere near as important as the playwright's. So my work is really framed in the theater by what I try to get out of the play and understand about what the playwright is trying to work with, and work with artists, actors, and designers to get that across. So in some ways, that will always be that way, regardless of what I do in the regular world. And the theater has its own rules, Mark, as you know. It does not play to the rules of the rest of the world because we're trying to create something in a certain kind of way. And so I must admit that I'm probably a lot nicer person when I'm working with children in Armenia than I am when I'm working in the theater, where I tend to be a bit of a tyrant sometimes. But that's just part and parcel with the theater and how it works. But yes, I would assume that it would show up in certain kinds of ways. And I'm interested always to see exactly what that is, because I don't spend a lot of time thinking about when I'm working. I just work and it comes out.
Well, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and talk more with Eric Hill here. I know you're doing a project called Story House, which is a different kind of theater. Story Horse. Sorry about that. And want to chat a little bit more about that. You're listening to Artsbeat Radio here on 89.5 FM WSKB. Next week, Friday at 8 o'clock, we'll be talking with Kristen Van Ginhoven, who is the founding director of the Wham Theater, also in the Berkshires, and she's directing the Pulitzer Prize-winning play Disgraced, which is at Chester Theater. That's next week here on Artsbeat Radio. But we'll be taking a break now to once again acknowledge the underwriters who make radio like this possible. And when we come back, I'll be here with our engineer, Peter Coles, and Eric Hill, so don't go away.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Barnes & Noble College Bookstore in the Ely Campus Center, offering Westfield State T-shirts, sweatshirts, and gift merchandise, all of your academic needs, and offering textbook materials in new, used, ebook, and rental formats. Available at the bookstore on campus or online at westfieldstate.bncollege.com.
Underwriting for community radio is provided by the YMCA of Greater Westfield. Every day, the YMCA strengthens the community through programs and services focused on youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility. For all the Y's many programs and services, visit us on the web at www.westfieldymca.org. The YMCA, 67 Court Street in downtown Westfield. We're more than a gym. We're a cause.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Dunkin' Donut Shops of Westfield and the Sardinia family. It's nice to know that even as the world changes, Dunkin' Coffee remains the same at 7 convenient locations throughout Westfield.
We thank the generosity of our underwriters. For more information, please contact the Westfield State Foundation at 413-572-8646.
He rules the roost on Thursday from 6 till 10. It's Patrick Berry.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
Live from the campus of Westfield State University, this is 89.5 FM WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Mark Auerbach. You're listening to Arts Beat Radio here on 89.5 FM WSKB. We're broadcasting this morning from the studios at Westfield State University. Peter Coles is my engineer. My guest is Eric Hill, the actor, director, teacher. And I always put teacher in because I have worked with, well, Eric and I, we worked together about 35 years ago at Stage West. And Eric, in a way, was my teacher. I was the PR guy. Eric was the actor and the director. But I learned more about what goes into making a play and who you address and what the play should mean to the audience and all that from working with Eric. So Eric, in many ways, was my teacher in helping me understand what theater is. So I guess you had an impact on me in some ways, Eric, which I'm always glad to acknowledge.
I think you came pretty well equipped already. You did go to Yale, so it's not like you showed up without any understanding of what we were doing.
Yeah, and I had been on the stage. I had done my share of curtain speeches, so I knew what it was like to project my voice.
Well, but you knew about theater, and I think you knew the inner workings of theater to a large extent. So I'm not sure I did all that much education.
No, but I think you opened doors for me, and I never forget that when I go to see a show or to review a show. Many of the things that during our collaborative times you taught me in terms of perspective. So I always keep that in mind. You're doing an interesting theater thing that to me seems to be a new project called Story Horse. Tell me about that.
Well, that was just something I was invited in to do by, actually speaking of education, during the very early years when I was here. I worked with the apprentice program here at the Berkshire Theater Group, and it's a very big part of what we do, and we have young actors to come in and actually start their careers here in an apprentice or intern level and then move up into the profession. And one of them was that time an actor named Jeremy Davidson, who's gone on to a very fine career. And he's married an actress named Mary Stuart Masterson, who I'm sure you've heard of. She's a film actress. And they've moved to Tivoli, New York, which is down the Hudson. And they've really created a unique theater there based on doing stories that they find in the area, historically placed stories that resonate within the area. And Jeremy writes up these. He calls them really concerts, but they are really documentary theater kind of pieces, and they're very interesting. And they explore local history that goes way back and involves the people who are still living in these areas down along the Hudson. And it's fascinating theater and very well supported. They're done as readings, and they have a multimedia kind of backdrop where they project things, historically relevant documents and photographs and so forth. So it's a choreographed visual and reading kind of event. And I've just had a lot of experience reading plays and doing that kind of work. And Jeremy and I are very close, so inviting me down to do a reading, and one turned into two, and two turned into three. So I've really just gotten involved. And there's one of the things of our area that's really remarkable is a lot of actors from New York City, and they live in this area, up from the city, up the Hudson River, and into the Berkshires and surrounding areas. And so there's a really wide pool of actors, really good actors to draw from. And they're reading, so you don't need to rehearse a long time. And so Jeremy pulls in these wonderful actors to do these readings, and I've had such a great time going down there. The audiences are large and enthusiastic. They really respond well to the pieces, and I've had a great time doing it. So it's a whole new sort of adventure for me, and something I love to do as an actor, to just go down and work with actors that I've never worked with before, encounter these wonderful scripts that Jeremy does, and really to learn the history of the Hudson Valley.
Let me ask you, you just said that there are so many talented people that New York actors and all that are living here. The area touts itself as having a creative economy, and other people say that, for example, Berkshire Theater Group and Barrington Stage have revitalized the city of Pittsfield. And without them, Pittsfield would still be a barren wasteland. And there are filmmakers here and videographers, and motion pictures are getting made and theaters getting done. What is it about the area that nurtures this kind of activity?
Well, I think it's always been a hub of culture in many ways. People looking to get out of the city and to have second homes, or have a place where they can summer and then have the kind of cultural activities that they're accustomed to, either in Boston, New York, or wherever people come from who have second homes here. And that cultural tradition extends back into the late 19th, early 20th century, and that's been something that's been going on here for a long time. So over a long period of time, this has simply become a cultural hub, primarily in the summers. But now that with the differing in new times, there's year-round stuff going on here. Of course, in this immediate area, Tanglewood is in the Berkshires where I live. Tanglewood is the hub, cultural hub. It's the biggest venue. It's the Boston Symphony Orchestra summer home. There's the concerts there all through the summer. So basically, that was that's been the center post of all what else has gone on. But people who come for culture and come here, they want to see a lot of different things. And so there's several theaters, as you've mentioned, have sprung up in the area. There's a wealth of museums. It's just been for a long time a place where people, come to have cultural experience. They associate it with that, and it's as opposed to, say, going to the Hamptons or going to the Cape or whatever. People who come for the summers here are people who, in part, want that cultural dimension to whatever it is they're doing. So, naturally, actors flock to where those people in those places are, because that's where they can find summer work, and they can find a place to go outside of the city. And for any actor who lives and works in New York, believe me, coming up into the Berkshires in the summer and getting out and enjoying a day like today and working in an environment like this, who wouldn't want that?
No, I understand that, because I do a lot of work with the Capitol Steps, and they have a summer residency at Cranwell, which kicks in next week. And they can't wait to get out of Washington and the heat and all that and spend, I think each one gets to spend 2 to 3 weeks here, and they love it.
Yeah, well, what's not to love at Cranwell? I mean, it's, so they're having a wonderful experience, and they're great, too, by the way. And they're here every year, so it's they and so many other things just simply become part of the way of life here. And we've gotten so used to it. I suppose we're spoiled in that way. And there are a lot of organizations around here to the extent where one wonders what the critical mass may have been exceeded already, where there may be just simply too much, because you just can't do everything here in the summer, and you see everything and take everything. There's just so much. The area attracted writers and people like Edith Wharton and Thoreau, and they came back to the nature of Massachusetts to kind of regroup and think about things and write about things. I know you spend a lot of time in your garden. What is there's something about the area that allows you to kind of regroup, put things in perspective. I know you've found that, but you find other people are finding the same thing, right? Well, yeah. I mean, I'm just a nature person, and I love the outdoors, and I the summers here are just an exquisite place to be, and especially this year, the growth is really just astonishing because of all the moisture we've had. But yeah, I find that people come to this area because of the natural environment, and to be part of the nature here. And regardless if they're interested in culture or gardening, it doesn't really matter. You do encounter nature here in a way and on a scale that you don't really get in the city, certainly in most suburban areas. It's rural, and you can get pretty far out in the woods around here if you want to. And I really like that. I enjoy that. I think it's a respite from the pace of the world, which can be sometimes overwhelming, and I require in my work, certainly, and in the process, I require a certain kind of peace and quiet that allows me to think and concentrate on what I'm trying to do, and find a rhythm that's, set apart from the activity of the world sometimes. And so this is the perfect place for that. I mean, some of the most interesting writers that have lived in this area, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Herman Melville wrote Moby Dick about 5 minutes from my house here. Edith Wharton, as you mentioned earlier, used to be at the Mounds. And Edna St. Vincent Millay wrote poetry down in Austerlitz, New York, which is another 10 minutes down the road in the other direction. And the one thing that you do find in those writers is that they settled into the area, and it really did inform, how they were writing, what they were writing about. And so, it is an inspiring area. It has that quality to it. It's a very I don't know, it's a place that really ignites the imagination, just driving around the hills here and being a part of the life here. It is a very stimulating environment to be in.
Did you ever think when you were starting out in the theater, when New York was supposed to be the pinnacle of all things, that you could find a very happy and satisfying life in the hills of Western Massachusetts?
Well, not the hills of Western Massachusetts necessarily as being in my mind as a place to end up, but my career path has never really led through New York City as a anchor or a place to be, to operate my career from. I've always been interested in being part of a repertory company, working with actors in an environment that's not necessarily the New York type of theater environment. And I've had a long run in experimental and avant-garde theater and international theater, as you know, in my work with Japanese director Tadashi Suzuki. And so I followed a path that never really went directly through New York, although I've obviously been through New York quite a bit. And my work, like everybody else in the American theater, is influenced and informed by what goes on in New York and my relationship with it. But I never really had in my mind something that said, oh, you have to go to New York. Quite the opposite. I was looking for theater experiences that were based on how theater was done and how companies might be able to achieve a certain kind of theater that was not necessarily what you get when you go to New York City, which is people being hired for a show and working in a production and then disseminating it back into the business. I wanted to work with companies that held together for a long period of time and worked on theater from that point of view, and that's certainly what I've ended up doing. So to do that, we really do have, in addition to the number of people out of New York and stars and so forth that we have here, we do have a company here that has worked with Kate over the many years that she's been here, and so I've been able to work with a group of people closely over a period of time, and that is just something that you don't get everywhere. And so if it happened in Western Massachusetts, that was a good reason to land in Western Massachusetts. The fact that it's a beautiful rural area has certainly helped, but I think the thing that brought both Kate and I here and allowed us to land here was our commitment to a kind of theater where company, community, working within the context of an environment that was specifically designed to have educational components, which is a huge part of what we do here, and a theater that was more pervasive in its approach than just being part of a, go to New York, get an agent, hire out, do shows, and grow your career that way. That's never really been my intent, and this just happened to be the place where I landed.
Well,
lucky me, yeah.
Yeah, you landed in a good place, and in an organization that's celebrating 90 years, which I think is a milestone in any arts organization these days, particularly in tough economic times, but also in history sense. The regional theater movement really didn't kick off until maybe 60 years ago. So
that's right.
Berkshire Theater superseded it in all, and there's going to be a big celebration next weekend. The first of, can't believe July is around the corner. But
no.
The 90th anniversary gala, I'm real excited because I'm getting to go to that, and around that will be a world premiere of a new play. And Berkshire Theater Group has done a lot of new work and a lot of premieres and revivals. And this season sent a show to New York, which how terrific is that?
Yeah, we've had 3 just this past year. Shows that premiered here go to New York off Broadway or Broadway. So yeah, it's been very, very lucrative in terms of mining the fresh talent out there, creating new work, and then allowing it to move into the New York theater scene. It's been very, very it's been very effective at spying new talent, new plays, and figuring out a way to get these plays produced and get them up so that they could move on in their own right.
The play that's premiering, the Coming Back Like a Song, which I guess we'll be speaking about when we do our special up at Berkshire Theater Group in a couple of weeks, which will be airing here on WSKB in July. But Coming Back Like a Song is the next in a line of premieres. And do you think? Do you know much about it at this point?
I don't know anything about this. I know Lee Kalschreitman is the created the play, but I don't know the piece. I haven't read it, and it's just now gone into rehearsal. So I really have no experience with the piece at all. So I'm as fresh as everybody else is on this one.
Now, your play, which is Pirandello's Naked, comes into the Unicorn at the end of the season. How much rehearsal time will you have with that? When will that be cast and rehearsed?
The casting for that is pretty much complete. The rehearsal process will probably be 3 weeks plus a week of technical rehearsals.
So you've got time to plot that one out. Did you pick the play, or did Berkshire Theater pick you?
Yeah, and Kate McGuire handed me the play and said, "Are you interested in doing this?" And I read it. And I knew the play, but I hadn't read it in a while, and I said, "Sure, yeah, I am." And that's sort of the way we work. I mean, Kate has a wealth of ideas. But her way of working is to make sure she links the right director with the right play. And she has plays on her list, but she won't do them until she's really sure she has the right director and that the director has the right people in mind to work with to get the play done the right way. And so she runs a number of plays by me in a given year and sees if I'm interested. And then when she begins to narrow her decision-making process down, she just makes sure that it's something that the director or whoever it is for whatever script she's got really wants to work on that play. And I think that's been her great success. That's her philosophy, and she's stuck by it.
Yeah, Graham Rowett, who stars in Church and State currently there, said something very similar, that Kate matched him with this script, and he felt that it was that kind of putting the recipe together that Kate did that makes some of the productions and makes what Berkshire Theater Group does rather unique.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. She's hit the nail right on the head with that. She has that producer's skill of mixing the ingredients together with great care. And she's not a director. She's an actress, and a very fine one. She's not a director. She doesn't direct plays. But she's one of those people who has that great skill of putting together all of the ingredients and then supporting the people while they put all that together and create something. And she's got that unique skill. And I've been so amazed at things that I never thought of, and I've done her job in other theaters, Stage West and other places. She really comes up with ideas I never would have come up with, and I'm always amazed at her ability to really find interesting material and always the ability to know I'm going to do this play because I got the right people to work on it.
Eric Hill, thanks for joining us this morning. It's been so great to chat with you. I look forward to seeing you.
We don't even have to go to Starbucks now and catch up. We've caught up.
We caught up, and hopefully we'll be catching up again and again and again in the future. I'm looking forward to the 90th season of Berkshire Theater Group. Saw Church and State. Can't recommend it highly enough, and it only runs through next weekend. So if you have a chance to run up to Stockbridge, do see it. Eric Hill's play Naked by Pirandello will close the Berkshire Theater Group's 90th season. You can find out more about it at berkshiretheatergroup.org. Next week here on Artsbeat Radio, Kristen Van Ginhoven from Wham Theater. This is Mark Auerbach with Peter Colson's studio at 89.5 FM WSKB. Thanks for joining us and have a great weekend.